Welcome to HortTube. My name is Jim Putnam. This is the garden question and answer video that I do most Sundays. You can ask gardening questions down in the comment section, and that is your question. There are, again, I say this every week, over 100 questions a week easily. I pick between 20 and 25, something like that each week, and answer those, try to pick ones that are kind of relevant to whatever's going on at that time, or ones I haven't answered in a little while that get asked very, very frequently. So some of them are just recurring so much that you may hear me answer the same question a few times here or there, but it's just because the volume, of that question. The Learn to Garden video series got a new video on winter interest in the garden, so just in the process of garden planning or redoing a space or trying to add some interest to a space. It's a video just about keeping winter interest in mind in the garden. Through the month of September, there's a $50 discount code for that video series. It's Fall 50. Again, it's through the end of September, and then that will go away. There's always a $25 discount down below the videos for the subscribers of the channel. But again, this month, an extra $25. It's over on my website, HortTube.com. A few videos went up this week. I did a lantana video, talking about my favorite flowering thing for September, one of the most prolific flowering things in September in the garden. I had a couple other pieces of content as well. Oh, a tour video of the garden here, and you can see, a lot of the house construction has been completed. A little bit more painting's got to be done. A couple more things still to go on the house, but it's getting closer to being a better part of the garden. Let's see. Okay, let's jump in and answer some questions from this past week. Somebody's talking about transplanting a hot lip salvia. Should they cut it back when they transplant it? I probably would cut it back. And I'm probably going to transplant one of these kind of cool season blooming salvias. I don't know if you can see the one that's down here that's really started to bloom again. When they're putting on this growth here in the fall and they're blooming, it's probably not the best time to be transplanting them. I'd probably do it toward the end of winter and just cut the thing in half and move it. And they're pretty daggone hardy, most of those. Hot lips is definitely an easy one to move, but I probably wouldn't do it in the fall. I'd probably wait until late winter. Okay, let's see. Somebody asked, and then the next question is another one about salvia. The best time of day to deadhead their salvia, because they have so many bees on them. It's just like, when do I do it? Because they're constantly like almost in a battle with the bees. Right, I'm filming this at 8 in the morning, and the bees are definitely starting to get going out here. If I'd have been out here an hour ago, I could have probably done it pretty easily. So between 6 and 7 in the morning, probably. There are none on this one right now. And then usually I'll come out here, a lot of times I'm filming out here 5 and 6 o'clock in the evening, 7 o'clock in the evening sometimes during the middle of the summer, and the bees are pretty much done, at that point. So it's definitely very, very early in the morning and then in the evening. And there'll still be a few bees overnighting, on your things, but they won't be active at that time. But it's definitely early or late. Somebody asked, so they want to fertilize. I frequently talk about not fertilizing in the fall, unless you're putting in like fall vegetables, or you have, containers that you're trying to get flowers on, that kind of thing. Other than that, I'm not fertilizing anything in the fall. And they were like, well, in Houston, it's such a tough situation all summer. When these nighttime temperatures start to cool a little bit, you start to see some growth on some things, and they figure their plants must be starving. I think that was in the question. No, your plants definitely aren't starving. Your soil, tried to. Nothing was fertilized before humans came around. The wood, everything evolved. All the plants evolved. All the grasses and the trees, the shrubs, the perennials, the annuals. All these things evolved without us. They don't actually need us. And if you're taking care of your soil, this person mulches and that kind of thing. If you're taking care of your soil, protecting that soil life, those mycorrhizal fungi, the beneficial fungi, the beneficial bacteria will take care of your plants for the most part. And that's most people watching. There are soils that would be very, very difficult this wouldn't be completely accurate. They're missing something, they need something. But for the most part, most everybody watching this, your soils have more in them than you think, and fertilizer companies, of course, want to sell you fertilizer. So, they've kind of created a situation in all our minds that everything needs fertilizer. Now, turf definitely needs fertilizer. It's an unnatural situation to try to keep something, green and growing 12 months out of the year in the cool season grasses and growing, during the summer and the spring. Those things need fertilizer because it's impossible to keep growing and be green like that all the time without additional fertilizers. But your trees and shrubs and things, really, if you're mulching and just generally best practices, keeping weeds away from things and the other things that we talk about, you just don't need very much additional fertilizer. And you definitely pretty much don't want to be fertilizing in the fall on the things that are in the ground, especially synthetic fertilizers. I'm mainly talking about synthetic fertilizers here. That's man-made fertilizers that basically feed your plants directly. They skip the process of feeding the soil life and letting the soil life feed the plants, which is normally how fertilizer happens. Like leaves fall off a tree, those leaves break down, the nutrients that were in those leaves, are made available through a process of breaking down through, bacteria and fungi and earthworms and, larger life as well. And then those things break down and become food for the plant. They become available forms for the plant. That's the natural process. That's how organic fertilizers work, okay? But synthetic fertilizers have been designed to just go directly to the, directly to feeding the plant nitrogen, to push it, phosphorus, whatever, putting them in available forms. If you use those types of fertilizers, your plants are going to try to grow, and then, cold is going to come. Now, Houston, a little less likely that cold is going to come along and do significant damage, but most everybody watching, if you push your plants at this time of year, it has the potential to make them slightly more likely to be damaged in the winter. It doesn't mean they will be damaged in the winter. When we're talking about this stuff, we're talking about best practices, not saying that if you did it right now, all your plants would die. That's not the case at all, but you have the potential risk of taking more damage, stressing a plant, having it growing at a time that doesn't really want to be. But you will see some growth on some things. I see butterfly bushes and other things. These cool nights have definitely, some of our plants, especially some of our non-native plants that, have been brought here from other places, they were stressed all summer long, like, oh, what is going on? And then as soon as we got a couple cool nights, they start to grow a little bit. Puts them in a slightly vulnerable condition going into fall, whether you fertilize them or not. But anyway, yes, that's the reason. So really, I'm talking about if you go out and fertilize them with organic fertilizer, it won't matter. If you feel the need to do it with organic fertilizer, the organic fertilizer needs active soil life in order to be active. And so as the soil temperature starts to cool off, those things will become less active and the fertilizer won't have any negative impact on your plants overall. I hope that makes sense. That the way organic fertilizer works is it just feeds, it's the natural process with which fertilizer would have happened anyway, which is the plants basically recycling themselves, and then at the same time the plants are rooting out into the ground and they're breaking up rock. And they're breaking up, they're creating soil underneath, and then all of these systems are working together to feed the plants. They don't need us. At the end of the day, most of them don't need us. Other than in ornamental landscaping, they need us to mulch and, some of the decorative touches that we do in ornamental landscaping. But overall, these plants don't really need us. And your plants aren't starving. They definitely aren't starving. Your soil has everything they need pretty much, as long as you're protecting that soil life in the soil that can feed them. Another very long answer from Jim. Okay, so somebody asked, they just throw biotone in the bottom of the hole in the fall. This is another fertilizer question. I don't use biotone at all. I sold it for years at my garden center. The fertilizer, if you use plant tone or holly tone or any of the other products that they make, it says up in the corner that it contains biotone, so you're adding biotone when you're fertilizing in the late winter anyway. And so I don't find it necessary to put it in the bottom of the hole. Those of you who do and you have success and you're happy with it, do it. It doesn't really, no skin off my back. It's just, I think it's a waste of time, personally. I see the videos, just dump a bag of biotone in the bottom of the hole, and then I get people say, oh, I do that and I have such success. You're probably just a pretty good gardener with some experience and you'd have those same successes regardless. But again, I get the biotone's in the other fertilizer I'm using anyway, so I don't do it, period. But if it makes you feel good, you're not gonna hurt them in the fall or the spring or whenever you're planting using it. Doesn't matter, no issue. Somebody's got like a 20% slope in their front garden and they have a Norway maple. It's really difficult to garden around. It's compact, dry soil, and then it has a slope on top of that. They've been able to improve the soil in other areas of their garden by mulching, repeatedly. Wood chips, mulch, whatever. This area is a much slower process. Yeah, it's going to continue to be in all likelihood, unless you come in there and put some sort of terracing in it, and slow the erosion of that organic material off of that slope. You're probably always going to struggle to gain a footing in that area. And it goes back to that question last week about, is this an area that's 100% necessary for you to, want to have it? If a perfect ornamental garden space is your desire, that Norway maple is probably in the way of that in future plans, just because of the aggressiveness of its roots and the aggressiveness of its, ability to steal water and nutrients and everything else. I think I just got stung. Anyway, so keep, I'll do what you will, but I think unless you're going to terrace that area in some way, I think you're going to struggle to ever improve that soil a lot. There you go. Somebody has English ivy and vinca, and said they were an older person, probably older than a lot of the people who have said they're older. I did get stung. I was up against this an unfriendly pollinator. It's the first time I've been stung in years, actually. Let's see. They've got English ivy and vinca, so they're somewhat older. Wanted to know how to go about attacking it, and wanted to know if it, like a cardboard box, covering it in cardboard boxes and mulch and those kinds of things. All of those things would help. They've been trying to pull it thus far, and I think you're really going to have a terrible time trying to get rid of vinca and English ivy pulling. In fact, it probably encourages it in a lot of ways. If you're not getting all the roots out of it, you're going to probably struggle to get a hold of this space. So yes, you can sheet mulch it, use cardboard boxes, whatever you want, whatever strategy you want to do. You could cover it in plastic for some period of time. Don't leave the plastic as part of the garden space. And I got a question coming up about that in just a minute. But and then again, I occasionally say this, this is what chemicals were made for. When you have a space like this, if it's going to take you 2 years to get to the starting line because you have English ivy and vinca, for me, I'm spraying that. There's not a lot of things I'm going to spray, but that is literally what glyphosate was made for. And I find that English ivy and a few of those woody, viney things in the fall, just like everything else, just like all of these other plants that are going to sleep, they pull nutrients and back down into the ground and kind of store them in their root system. So in the fall, as the days are getting shorter, things like ivy will pull those chemicals down into their own roots. I find it's a much more effective time of the year to spray poison ivy, poison oak, English ivy, vinca, all those things in the fall, because they'll actually just take it right down in their own roots and damage themselves. So anyway, I throw that out there. Don't talk a lot about spraying on this channel, although I think maybe this is the second time this week I have. But overall, that's what those chemicals were made for. And if they can get you to the starting line of feeling like you're actually going to move forward in your garden, go for it. Let's see, anything not to plant this month, Zone 7A. I talk about this in the monthly videos most months, is in the fall, I don't plant a lot of things that are marginal in my area. So if I'm in Zone 7A as an example, Laura Petalum, which I have one blooming right behind me. This is Emerald Snow Laura Petalum, and it's green with white flowers. It was in the tour video this week. Beautiful, beautiful plant, really. This is a plant in Zone 7. It'll grow in all of Zone 7, but I probably don't fall plant it just because it has the potential in that first winter to get damaged. You want a whole season under it in Zone 7A. So anything that's listed Zone 7 and up, if I'm in Zone 7A, I probably want to spring plant that. And that wouldn't be everything Nothing is everything in horticulture, but most things that are marginally hardy in my area, I don't want to plant in the fall. Because we just don't know what the first winter is going to be. Maybe it's mild and it's no big deal, but if it's a severe winter and it's gone through transplant shock, a dry fall probably, and then goes into a tough winter, those are plants that can really be damaged. And then again, I've talked about many times about ornamental grasses, and a lot of grass-like plants I don't plant in the fall, because when we do a soil disturbance, that's going to be a place that's going to stay wetter during the winter time. The water's always going to run into the easiest spot it can get into the ground, and a newly dug hole is going to be the easiest place for water to get in the ground. So if you had a particularly wet winter, grasses tend to take it a little tough. They end up smaller. You put them in the ground as these big, beautiful 1 gallon or 3 gallon grasses. And then when they wake up in the spring, they're like a third that size. That's a little bit of root rot that occurs during the winter time. So I just always moved my grass plantings on my landscape jobs over to the spring, because I had to guarantee things for a year. So that's what I would do. I cannot tell how good this video, might be too much reflection in this. I think the light was getting weird in that other spot. There's Holly behind me. I don't know if she had been in there behind me before now or not. Let's see. I think I covered the the things that I wouldn't plant in the fall. So somebody was asking just how do you tell the difference between something that's been overwatered versus sun stressed. Sun stress, and I put a heat damage video up 2 weeks ago, or maybe it was earlier this week. That may have been one of the ones from this week. If you want to go back and look at that. Heat damage, unfortunately, can show up as so many different looks. You can burn the edge of the leaves. You can get yellow new growth issues. You can get old leaves dropping off from the middle. You can get spotting on the leaves. It honestly looks like disease. So there's a lot of different looks that you can get from sun stress. So it can be very difficult really to tell the difference. It's most of the time pretty unlikely that you're going to be doing overwatering damage in peak summer. It's a little more difficult to put enough water to do damage unless it's an area that just stays boggy. It's a little more difficult. So, and if you're in 100-degree heat and you're getting weirdness in the foliage on your plants, it's likely that it's some sort of heat-related stress. Now, again, interior thinning typically is the plant was dry at some point. Doesn't mean it was dry that day you're looking at it, but if you get the inside of the plant losing leaves, that's the plant just kind of resetting itself to say, I need to lose a third of these leaves quick because I just don't have enough water to work with. Typically, if we get, I don't know why Jill is blooming right now. Typically, if we get a lot of yellowing in the newest growth, that's some sort of root damage related issue. And it could be that you're overwatering it. It could be that it's some sort of stress from having just transplanted it, or it could be heat stress related because it got so hot that it just broke down the plant's ability to do basic chemistry that it needs to do to bring the proper nutrients up into the top of the plant to keep the leaves looking like they're supposed to look and growing like they're supposed to grow. It just broke down that process. So that's where the overlap can happen, is you can get off coloration in the new growth. Typically I would call that overwatering, but in peak summer, I doubt you're overwatering it enough to cause those kinds of issues, but it is some sort of root related issue where it can't exchange. The plant's basically a solar panel, and it's collecting the sun's energy, turning that into sugars. It's taking those sugars down in the ground. It's feeding the soil life, and that soil life is helping bring water and nutrients and other things that the plant needs to continue this process, okay? And somewhere in that process, it's breaking down, and it's not getting the nutrients it needs to produce leaves that are, not off-colored, or, you see the veins in them and that kind of thing. Some nutrient deficiency is happening, and that can be caused by, again, overwatering, or it can show up as heat stress as well. Similar looks in that regard, but peak summer, I'm thinking it's more likely heat stress. One other thing I'd throw out in that, though, is if your plant has gone through some sort of issue where it's lost a third of its leaves, you probably do want to start backing off on the watering, because it's kind of put itself back in a place where it can manage the ongoing situation. So if it's a plant you've been watering it like crazy and then it's going through some sort of stress, you may actually want to back off on the watering. Make sure you're checking it before you water, because the plants are capable of putting themselves back in balance. And then once it's lost some leaves, it doesn't need the water as much, and you can overwater them. But again, I would think midsummer weird foliage is going to be heat stress. If you've had crazy hot temperatures, which most of us have had this summer. Okay. So somebody's in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, and they've got 6 red buds that really took a beating. Different collection of red buds, Ruby Falls, Golden Falls, like I have, and Flamethrower, that kind of thing. They've all taken a beating. Is there anything that they would do now that the temperatures have fallen into the 80s? No. Just leave them be. Make sure they're well mulched. Those red buds, and I don't know how much sun you have them in down in that DFW area of Texas, I would, if they're in big open sunny areas, I would be underplanting them next spring with some zinnias or some vinca or some sort of low growing annual or perennial thing that will keep their roots shaded, even more so than just the mulch. You know, my Golden Falls back here, you know, has things all around the base of it, so the sun can't beat the roots up on that plant. It's in top of the plant's in the full sun, and it's in the full sun right this minute, but the area around it, the sun's never going to be able to beat up its roots. So make sure, you know, next summer that they're not just sitting out in open space with brown mulch to absorb heat, you know, around them. So somebody got one of those Temple of Bloom 7 sunflowers, and it looks like it's wilting. That Heptacodium, that's how they grow. There's a hummingbird right in front of me. Of course, any angle that I would film out here would never have the hummingbird behind me. The branch comes out and then the leaves just kind of hang down on each side of the branch. So it's kind of normal to look like it's in a slight wilt. That's Heptacodium. It looks like it's wilting, but it's probably not. It's just how that limb hangs here, and the leaves just kind of dangle off of the bottom of them. Really neat foliage on those plants. Let's see. So somebody asked why raise pots off the ground. They've got their pots sitting up off the turf, and I've got these containers back here sitting on bricks, except for one back there. They're all sitting on some sort of stone or bricks or something like that to keep them off the ground. They were like, why would you do this? You know, is it so that they don't root into the ground? Because we know the roots will just come right out of the bottom of the drain holes and root into the ground. I've got an azalea back there that's well rooted in the ground. It's been in a container for 3 years back there. Or is it to keep air movement underneath it? Or is it to keep the drain holes open? Well, all of those reasons. You know, you're keeping the drain holes open to make sure the water can get out of the bottom of the pot. You're raising them up off the ground to keep air movement, and also keep slugs from having a place. If you set any stone, container, rock, anything in your garden that gives a slug a place to go under. Slugs and snails love, you know, those kind of moist, it's always moist under a brick, right? Or always moist under a container, always moist under a stone. That's, you know, hiding places for them. So that's one thing. And then of course, you know, keeping the air movement, keeping them dry around the base. The main reason I actually raised them off the ground. So all of those things are legitimate, but I think the main thing is when plants are in containers and they tend to go through wet periods, dry periods, heavy fertilizing periods, low fertilizing periods. It's a stressful environment in a container, a very changeable environment. It's colder when it's cold, it's hotter when it's hot when you're in a container. A lot of stresses. When you put the pot right on the ground, okay, this is the reason nurseries have gravel or landscape, some sort of fabric that they're growing their plants on. They're trying to put a barrier between the soil and that container. That barrier prevents soil-borne diseases from getting into that container. And again, in a container environment, that plant is far more vulnerable to disease. So for me, as a nurseryman, I'm trying to make sure there's a barrier between the ground and my container, because that's how soil-borne diseases can jump into your containers, and your container plants are far more vulnerable to them for a long list of reasons, like I just said, from being hot, cold, dry, wet, you know, over fertilized, under fertilized, all those kinds of things. So I do it for disease prevention. So then somebody asked thoughts on using black plastic as weed barrier. I don't use any plastics, you know, like that in the garden. Kind of proud on this channel, honestly. It's one of the earliest videos I put up on this channel was about the pros and cons of weed control fabric. And I made that video because I didn't want to go, weed control fabric is terrible. But it kind of is. You know, the places that I see it around the neighborhood where it's old, you know, it's just breaking down. There's bits of plastic everywhere. All the plants root in on top of it eventually anyway, whether it's the fabric or the plastic, whatever you're using. It's really, really hard to remove once it's gotten into that process of breaking down. There's going to be microplastics in your soil. Who knows what the long-term consequences of any of the microplastics that we've put everywhere are, the plastics breaking down in the oceans and everywhere else. So I don't use any of that. And again, I put that video up, and gardening channels that were older than mine, lots of them used weed control fabric in their other videos, and that's kind of stopped. So, you know, I'm kind of proud that I moved the bar on that. Again, it's another one of those things somebody's trying to sell you that has a short-term benefit and a long-term problem. We're trying to improve our soil, and I've said this many times. That was the biggest thing about the pros and cons of weed control fabric. The biggest con is it basically ends soil improvement. So you put a barrier between the soil and your mulch, then the mulch is no longer improving your soil. So that was the main reason. But anyway, so I don't use any plastic barriers like that. Let's see. So somebody has a burning bush that's been pruned poorly for years, and it looks funny. What should they do about it? I would prune it even harder. I'd cut the thing to the ground in the late winter and let it come back from that. And that way you'll get rid of all those weird knuckles and things that pollarding look that's happened on the plant from it being pruned for years. I'd go way below that old pruning, you know, the pruning that's been done, and pretty much reset it down to the ground. Otherwise it's going to continue to look weird. So somebody says, is it true you shouldn't prune boxwoods after mid-July? You shouldn't prune most things after mid-July, especially early flowering things, you know, like azaleas and other things. They've set their buds, hydrangeas, those kinds of things have set their buds already for next year or in the process of doing it. So that's the reason you wouldn't prune those. The leafy evergreen things and the conifers, the thought is the same thing I said on the fertilizer, is any pruning you do can stimulate growth, and that growth could be problematic going into its normal wind down period in the fall as it needs to go to sleep. Boxwoods, it's probably irrelevant. So with all those words, boxwoods, it's probably irrelevant. You could probably prune them pretty much anytime you wanted to prune them, but best practices would be that you would stop pruning. You would prune from maybe February until the 15th of July, something like that. That's probably the best window where the plant could do its natural growth and ebb and flow that it would do year round. But again, boxwoods you could probably do whenever. Most of these woody shrubs you could probably do whenever. It's just best practices, right? Versus limited damage that you'd probably do doing it in a bad time of year or lose flowers. So somebody read an article about pollinators in vegetable gardens being this latest trend, versus traditional lawns. And is it actually trending? Yeah, there's a lot of people. I mean, all these photos that you guys have sent in, all these before and after photos, which there'll be another before and after photo video this coming week. And thank you guys for participating in that. The photos are amazing. I have so many emails that you guys have sent, so I really appreciate it. Those videos could go on for a long time, and I'm glad because I've enjoyed looking at them. Yeah, this is definitely a trend. I mean, the photos that I'm getting from you guys, it's amazing how many of you have converted lawn space into either producing food for yourselves and your families. That's probably a lot more nutrient dense than what you get otherwise, at grocery stores. A lot of great pollinator gardens that I've seen folks sending. So yes, it is a trend. It's not, I say design for what your life is. I mean, if you have young kids, I mean, they probably would learn from the butterflies and the bees and all the things you'd be inviting into the garden, and definitely them participating in the vegetable garden. My son would eat bell peppers out of the garden. He'd never eat one if you bought it at a grocery store and put it in the house, but if he picked it out of the garden, he'd eat it. So, keep that in mind. You can actually, having your kids participate in vegetable gardening goes a long way, and then they learn, where they come from, and nobody can. So a lot of people have no idea where the food comes from, which is just, our disconnect with that now is just amazing to me. But I would keep a big open lawn space, if I had young kids, because, you want to throw Frisbee and, have fun and run and play. So know where your life is, and it's what you want, right? It's not what I want or anyone else wants, it's what you want. But there is definitely a trend in the direction of less lawn, or lawn becoming, I've always said lawn with a purpose. Explain to me what it is. Why are you keeping this lawn? What is it about this lawn that you're keeping? I see big lawn spaces that go into a corner of a fence in the back of a property, and I go, man, you're mowing that all the time. What is the actual purpose of it? So that's the only thing I say. What is the purpose of the lawn that you have? If it's decorative, great, enjoy. If it's for kids, great, enjoy. But if you can't explain other than I mow it every Saturday, that might just be a place for a tree or a shrub or something that will be less maintenance for you. Okay, so somebody planted some pittosporum in the spring, and they have lots of spotted leaves. Should they prune them hard? I would probably just wait till next spring and let them come out and flush out. They'll probably be much cleaner. You can clean up some of the fallen leaves that have fallen off of it, but you'll see this a lot of times the first year you buy something. I see this a lot on Nandinas, where they'll have some spotty leaves, drop some foliage the first season, and then they'll correct themselves and flush out of it. It may have been something in the overhead irrigation from being overhead irrigated at the nursery or something like that, and it's just a transition. But typically most of these plants will grow out of that type of thing. Just wait. Again, let them take on some growth next spring, and if you need to prune them to thicken them up at that point, you could, and then clean up any of the leaves that have fallen off of it. Okay, I always get the multiple plants per pot question. Yes, more and more and more you see shrubs and perennials being double stuck, triple stuck, quadruple stuck at the nurseries, and so you're seeing 3-4 plants in the pot. It's not my favorite, but it's just, it's what we see out there in the in the world. So somebody had white pines planted at the back of their leach field. The previous owner had planted white pines right at the bottom of their leach field. The white pines over time had stretched and become weird, and so they took them down. And they just had the general question of why this person would have put white pines back there. Anyway, I don't know. Maybe they were looking for a tree that had a taproot, rather than a spreading root system like a maple or something like that. Maybe it was something they were thinking through. I think they probably just liked the look of those white pines when they went to the garden center and they bought them, because they're white, they are beautiful in containers. These were in too much shade and ended up getting too big. They had not hurt the leach field, which that would be my expectation. That would be a plant that you could probably, if you're going to plant a tree near a leach field, something like a white pine would be probably on my list, just again, because it's going to root downward and not have that super fibrous root system that maples will have, where they're just almost hunting places for those roots to go. Your septic field would be high on that list. Somebody wants to know how to kill a mulberry hedge. This is another one. You got to dig them out, or you got to spray something on them at some point. I don't think you can't. If you cut mulberries to the ground, they're just going to come right back from the roots over and over and over again. There's one over here next to the fence that I've had a difficult time getting rid of for 3 years. It's still coming back from the roots at the bottom. I can't dig under it because it's next to one of the posts for the fence over there where it's concreted in. And it just keeps coming. 3 years later of it not having any foliage, it's still alive under there. So it's one of those things you have to spray or dig out. So we have a native mulberry, and then we have the Chinese mulberry, and I think most of the mulberries we see everywhere, and I could find 1,000 of them if I walked a quarter mile from here. I mean, no exaggeration. They're just literally everywhere in my neighborhood. They're mostly hybrids between the Chinese one and the native ones, is what you're seeing. And last question for this week, I had in last week's question and answer video, I had that Misty River osmanthus and the better boxwoods at the end of the video. Neither one of them are really available anywhere right now, but they will be. Somebody asked if they're both deer resistant. Yes, but again, you know, deer have overrun us now, and so a lot of the things we've traditionally said were things that deer would leave alone, you know, the deer have decided to sample. So if it were me and I had a massive deer problem, no matter what somebody told me about its deer resistance, I might buy one and then put it out there, see what happens, and then buy more, and not be really careful with large investments. If you have lots of deer, try different things, onesies, and see what they do. And if they're not eating them, then go heavy, you know, heavy with them. But that would be my suggestion for anybody who has real, because again, you know, the deer resistant list, the deer don't read the deer resistant list, right? So there you go. Thank you guys very much for participating. Again, there's a $50 gift code this month for the Learn to Garden video series, Fall 50. And ask questions in the comments down below, and I'll be back next week. Thanks for watching.